Yeah, like he's
Colbert and I
horrible
are
to
not
me.
friends.
Yeah, like those guys to me, they're just the worst sort of partisan nonsense. You want everybody.
But the good part of that is we don't hide it. Like, he doesn't like me and I don't like him. And we don't deny it and we don't like it.
No, but he's nothing.
Chuck Schumer's got the mask on, and look at Colbert, no mask, spreading pandemic viruses. Look, he's dancing, high-fiving and dancing with Chuck Schumer. What is this? Well, what kind of signaling is this?
Can you imagine Bill Hicks fucking dancing with a senator?
Jesus Christ. Well, Colbert was never really a stand-up.
All right, folks, get ready, because today we're diving into one of the wildest transformations in entertainment. I'm talking about Stephen Colbert, the former king of satire, who now feels a lot more like part of the Hollywood machine. This whole topic has really been heating up lately, especially after some pretty sharp criticism from Joe Rogan and Bill Maher. Those guys didn't hold back, and honestly, neither are we. Let's start with a simple but surprising point. This is the same Stephen Colbert who once took on powerful politicians, media elites, and the entire messy political system, and did it brilliantly. But now, you'll see him standing side by side with Chuck Schumer like they're old friends. And yes, there's a video of it out there, and it's hard not to feel a little awkward watching it. Just imagine the scene. Schumer's wearing a mask, Colbert isn't. They're laughing, high-fiving, even dancing together like best buddies. And it really makes you pause and wonder, wait a second, what exactly changed here?
Look at this. Chuck Schumer's got the mask on, and look at Colbert, no mask, spreading pandemic viruses. Look, he's dancing, high-fiving and dancing with Chuck Schumer. What is this? Well, what kind of signaling is this?
To really understand why this feels like such a big deal, we've got to go back to the start. Stephen Colbert once stood for everything that made comedy sharp and meaningful. He worked alongside Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, and later on his own show, The Colbert Report, he took apart political hypocrisy with real precision. He went after the powerful and didn't really play favorites, left, right, or center. If you deserved it, you were fair game. That's why seeing him now sharing a light, friendly moment with Chuck Schumer doesn't just feel a little strange, it feels symbolic. It comes across like a full 180 from the sharp, satirical voice people used to admire. Like Joe Rogan once pointed out, can you even picture someone like Bill Hicks high-fiving a senator?
Imagine Bill Hicks fucking dancing with a senator.
Jesus Christ. Well, Colbert was never really a stand-up, so, I mean, I guess he has that.
No, but I mean...
But he was a comic when the Colbert Report was on. I mean, that was hilarious.
It was really good.
He was great.
Yeah.
He was great. And that show was a great takeoff of a fucking pompous, ridiculous Republican.
Exactly.
I mean, it was fucking really good. And then when you see this, you're like, wait a minute. What the fuck? What are you doing?
Right.
The fuck are you doing?
And why were you doing the other thing before? Like,
right.
was it to do this?
Well,
can you picture George Carlin doing a choreographed dance with a politician? Exactly. You can't. Because real comedy isn't about getting close to power, it's about pushing back on it. But now, instead of that edge, it can feel like we're getting a more one-sided, preachy style from Stephen, all presented as humor. So when did late-night TV stop being mostly about laughs and entertainment and start feeling more like messaging with punchlines? And maybe the bigger question, why would someone as sharp and talented as Stephen lean into that direction? That's where Joe Rogan brings up an interesting idea. Maybe it wasn't sudden. Maybe it was a gradual pull, what he describes as the carrot, the mix of bigger money, wider fame, and access to a massive mainstream audience. After all, hosting The Late Show with Stephen Colbert is one of the most high-profile roles in entertainment. For decades, landing a late-night show has meant you've reached the top. It's the kind of opportunity that's incredibly hard for most comedians to turn down.
I think what happened was, and I'm just going to guess, but I think what happened was he had this brilliant character. It was amazing on The Daily Show. Then he does The Colbert Report. It's amazing there. It's a great show, right? And then they offer him the fucking carrot. What's the carrot? The carrot's a late night talk show.
Right.
Man, the late night talk show for I guess kind of my generation, was the thing that everybody wanted. Kimmel and Fallon and all these guys, like, you got to host the Tonight Show, or Jimmy Kimmel's got his own show. You got your own show. You got the Letterman show. You got the this show, the that show. That was the thing, man.
Right.
If you could get your own show like that, like, you were fucking in. If they offered it to you, you took it.
And here's where things get really interesting. Joe Rogan argues, and some people agree, that once you step into a big mainstream role, you can end up giving up a bit of your independence. The idea is that sharp, fearless satire slowly gets replaced with safer jokes, softer takes, and a more polished kind of humor. Instead of pushing back at authority, you start sounding a lot closer to it. In this view, Steven didn't just drift into that space, he chose it. When CBS offered him the spot once held by David Letterman, he took it without much hesitation, even though it meant moving away from the sharper style that first made him stand out. From this perspective, it wasn't random, it was a deliberate shift.
But then to be that show guy, he has to be a different guy. So now he's not... Colbert from the show was this genius parody. Now he's just Stephen Colbert.
Right.
That's who he is.
They destroyed the essence by giving him something.
Now let's be clear about one thing. Political comedy has always had some kind of lean. Comedians have their own views, and that's completely normal. Bill Maher leans left, while Dennis Miller leaned right. But the real difference is that great comedians still hold their own side accountable. They don't avoid criticizing someone just because they agree with them. That's where comedy gets its real strength. Take Dennis Miller, for example. He was once seen as a top-level comic, but when he said he wouldn't joke about George W. Bush because they were friends, that moment changed everything. And for many people, it felt like his credibility as a comedian took a serious hit.
Dennis Miller ran into that with George Bush. I remember being incredibly disappointed because I was a Dennis Miller fan. As a comic, he was a very good comic. And, you know, his HBO special was brilliant. He had some great shit, great jokes, great one-liners.
Absolutely.
But then he said he was going to give George Bush a pass because he's his friend. And he wouldn't make fun of him. Look at this.
The same idea gets applied today, and critics say it's exactly what happened with Stephen Colbert. The argument is that when you get too close to politicians, you start losing the freedom and maybe even the courage to really challenge them. Stephen spent years going hard at Donald Trump, which many saw as the easy target. But then the question gets asked, where was that same energy when it came to the other side? Instead of sharp criticism, critics say there was more smiling, more friendly moments with people like Chuck Schumer, and less of the uncomfortable satire he used to be known for. From that view, he wasn't really mocking power anymore. He was getting closer to it. And people also point to his pandemic-era comedy as an example, saying he pushed public health messaging in a way that felt more like preaching than joking, with skits and musical bits that some viewers found awkward or overly on the nose. To them, it didn't feel like traditional comedy pushing boundaries. It felt more like it was echoing the official line instead of questioning it.
Like, I think that's true with comics, with any kind of journalist. Like, once you start getting, handed things, then you've lost. You know what I mean? They have you at that point. And you got to get out of that habit, It's like, or you can't cross that line.
It's not just Stephen Colbert. People often point to others like Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, and even Jon Stewart as part of the same broader shift, where late-night comedy feels less risky than it used to. But Stephen stands out to critics because he once set such a high standard, and now, in their view, feels more like part of the mainstream system. There's nothing wrong with taking a big platform or making money, but the real question is what gets lost in the process, especially the freedom to challenge anyone, including your own side. Joe Rogan has pointed to a moment with Jon Stewart on Stephen's show as an example, saying Stewart joked about the lab leak theory while Stephen looked visibly uncomfortable and tried to steer things away, which critics interpret as him keeping the conversation within safe limits rather than letting it go where real comedy might go.
Best example of it was when Jon Stewart came on, and Jon Stewart was doing that bit about the lab leak theory, and Colbert is jumping in and stepping all over it.
Right.
And I'd like to see some evidence of that. Like, he's like fucking up the bit. Clearly, Stewart, who's a great comic, is in the middle of a bit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And Colbert's trying to, he's like, you can see the panic in his eyes that this is not going along with the narrative. So he's hamstringing the bit.
Right.
which is crazy to see.
Yeah, because they
Comedy works best when it feels free, and critics argue that when comedians start feeling tied to corporate or political expectations, it loses that spark. What's left, they say, doesn't feel as funny, and audiences notice it quickly and eventually tune out. That's the claim often made about Stephen Colbert and The Late Show with Stephen, where the shift in tone is blamed more than any change in viewers. Early on, people watched for sharp humor that could mock power, hypocrisy, and everyday absurdity. But over time, critics argue it leaned more into political commentary, especially around Donald Trump, and started to feel less like broad comedy and more like messaging. From that point of view, it's not about politics itself, but about balance. Viewers still want comedians who can go after everyone, including their own side. And critics say that when the tone becomes too predictable or one-sided, people simply stop watching.
You can't cross that line. You can't. But if you want to be on a talk show, you have to cross that line. There's no other way you get on that show. You can't get on that show and have some real counterculture narrative that is not approved and sanctioned, and you spit it out there on NBC.
Audiences tend to notice when something feels off. Critics say Stephen has shifted into a more controlled version of his on-screen persona, where the sharp wit and unpredictability that once defined him feel more restrained. Instead of free-flowing satire, they argue it now sometimes feels closer to delivering approved talking points. This view isn't just coming from one voice. Bill Maher has also been openly critical of modern late-night comedy, including Stephen's, saying it can lean too much into political alignment rather than genuine pushback. From that perspective, the argument isn't about talent, but about independence, whether a comedian is still challenging the system or operating comfortably within it.
But isn't that crazy that you're right, that all the comics that were supposed to put everybody to bed or whatever it is, they all went bananas left. I mean, Colbert, these guys are terrible. Like Kimmel to me is just fucking, you may be friends with him. I know a lot of people that were, I know
I
our
love
worlds are,
Jimmy.
yeah, like he is
Colbert and I
horrible
are
to
not
me.
friends.
Yeah, like those guys to me, they're just the worst sort of partisan nonsense. You want everybody.
But the good part of that is we don't hide it. Like, he doesn't like me and I don't like him. And we don't deny it and we don't like it.
No, but he's nothing.
Colbert?
Yeah, he's nothing.
He's also very successful.
No, but he's just giving the machine what it
At the end of the day, the takeaway for a lot of viewers is pretty simple. They feel comedy loses something when it becomes more about staying in line than speaking freely, no matter how successful the comedian becomes. From that point of view, if a performer drifts too far from what made them original in the first place, audiences may feel disconnected from the work. That's why some people argue that comedians need to protect their independence if they want to stay true to their craft. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you agree with voices like Joe Rogan and Bill Maher on this? Or do you see it differently when it comes to Stephen Colbert and his style of late-night comedy? Share your thoughts, because these conversations are always more interesting when different perspectives come in.